Welcome to Celestial Small Talk with Alice
and CJ. Celestial Small Talk refers to the big ideas, profound revelations, and deep connections that are created in the briefest of encounters. It is often in these moments that an imperceptible shift in thought can bring about the biggest change, helping us to more fully embody our intuition. We strive to inspire, illuminate, question, provoke, and spark the unique constellation within. Welcome to Celestial Small Talk. I am CJ, and with me as always is Alice. Alice, you are feeling lots of different ways today. Tell us what you need. What's on your heart?
I have been going through it, and I know that a lot of people have also been going through it since this is like a vortex between two eclipses that we're going through, and there's not a lot of answers for us right now. And I was actually doing really well up until this morning when I received unpleasant news, and I realized how much I take for granted the presence of somebody in my life that is just sort of been a constant grounding force. And when that person's not accessible, I feel very anxious, and I noticed that. And so I've been trying to do a lot of things to ground myself, also attending to a lot of things in my life that you need my attention, like my bills and, my insurance and all those things. And it's been kind of a good distraction. And I'm drinking my stress less tea right now and have my candles burn. And we just did a short reading with CJ, which was so helpful. And it just lifted a giant weight off my shoulders. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. And it's always nice when the cards can speak through me. I never feel like I have any answers, but whenever a card comes out that resonates with someone, it's really meaningful. I always feel like I use the cards as a mirror. So you get to kind of construct the meaning that you need to, which is why I think people have a hard time accepting tarot into their lives, because they're like, well, anyone could accept anything. And yeah, isn't that kind of the point? Is that we're all kind of going through different things at different times. And if we can find something that mirrors that and says, it's okay, you're not alone, and this will pass, that feels like more medicinal to me than many other forms of self-soothing.
Yes, absolutely. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, we were just talking about how it's a dark moon period and you're sort of struggling with it. And I'm feeling pretty confident. I was born during a waning crescent moon. And so the dark moon feels like a very restful, sort of cocoonish time for me. And particularly at where I am in my life, this time of turning inward and the idea of destruction before creation is very resonant with me. And I'm looking forward to the next moon cycle and setting new intentions for the new moon. But right now I'm just allowing myself to be okay with not having any answers and maybe not progressing at the rate I feel like I should, because I know that these cyclical things are just going to happen as they're supposed to happen.
I wonder if our listeners know which moon phase they were born, because I thrive during the waxing crescent. This is like right after the new moon. I just like, after my intention is set, I just go, 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 go. And I get so productive and I feel so much in my element. And I think that the phase right before the new moon has been sort of like the phase where I find the most discomfort in, because I have this drive to do things and making things happen. And I am not quite comfortable sitting in and cocoon, like in a cocoon sort of way. So I get it. I'm learning still to just be comfortable in any phases,
For sure. And learning that I was born under a waning crescent and learning just more about moon magic in general has been very therapeutic for me, because I always found it to be so restrictive when I would set an intention for a month and it started on a random Wednesday or a random Tuesday, just because that happened to be the first of the month. And one month could be 29 days and another could be 31, whereas the moon cycle is consistent. And even when you have eclipses and retrogrades and it stationed in relation to various planets, its cycle is constant, which is a really nice anchor to allow yourself to embrace change as it's coming in each month.
Yeah, absolutely. I have recently started to just follow the moon phases, and I have the freedom to set my own schedule. And so I allow time for, I take into consideration all the moon phases and all the things that is happening astrologically as well. It's such a game changer, being able to just follow your body because your body responds to the moon. And so just follow your body's need and allow things to happen. It's been a game changer.
Well, I'm looking forward to being able to do that. So, with that in mind, what are your intentions for this episode, Alice?
This episode is going to dive into some very deep and personal things. So I intend to allow space for any emotions to come up organically and authentically, and also to share responsibly and to listen mindfully. What about you?
Since this was sort of my topic, but I wanted to keep it open-ended, I guess I'm just allowing space for whatever comes up as well, whether it is emotions or unbidden downloads from my people or random thoughts or memories that come out, to just allow that to be as natural and organic as it needs to be.
Very nice. So would you like to tell us what the topic today is?
Last week, I was sort of going through some big emotions, as those of you who listened heard in the last bit of our episode, where I went through a really big ending in my life. And I mentioned to Alice when we were done recording that I thought that would be a really great topic of conversation for this next episode. And when I thought more about the idea of endings, I realized that I've always kind of seen things in a binary of endings and beginnings, and I've not really allowed for that transition. I've always kind of felt like as soon as something ends, something new has to begin without allowing for any time in between. And so I kind of wanted this conversation to allow for that whole cycle of endings, transitions, beginnings, endings, transitions, beginnings to just happen naturally. So if you heard last week, I ended my last day of teaching in the classroom and had lots of big emotions, and have allowed this week, maybe again, why I'm feeling kind of comfortable under this dark moon period, just allowing this time to envision what my next beginning is really going to look like, while letting go of the idea of perfectionism, because that is something that I struggle with a lot, and really embracing the idea of progress as opposed to perfectionism.
That's beautiful. I can't wait to get into this. I think we have some really important things to discuss today.
For sure. One article that I found actually related to the app Shine. If anyone is familiar with it, it is another meditation app, and it is developed by women of color because they really felt like modern day self-help, wellness, lifestyle content was really not focused on the experience of women of color. And the first time I listened to one of their meditations, I was hooked. I just loved the angle through which they approached meditation. And last week, there was a really beautiful session that talked about this idea of progress rather than perfection. And so I linked an article, which we'll put in the liner notes of this episode, that talks about this idea of progress, not perfection. And I wanted to pull out specifically two different ideas from that article. One is, I have only one shot at this. If I fail, if I lose, if I get rejected, it means I suck and I should quit. And so many people embrace that when they're coming to a new stage in their life. And when you step back from perfection and just focus on the progress, you get to reframe that idea to, I'll take as many shots as I can. I'll learn from every attempt. I'll get stronger and better. And I thought about this in the context of dating and relationships, because so many people feel like they need to pin their one hope on one person without allowing for all of the growth and development that happens naturally throughout a relationship. And so many people go from relationship to relationship without ever allowing themselves the freedom of singledom and allowing themselves to reconnect with themselves themselves before they enter into a relationship with someone else. And so when I think about this idea of dating and like, I have one shot and this is going to be my person because I need to get married, have kids, buy a home, whatever the thing is you feel like you need to attain, you put your hopes on that. And then when it doesn't happen, you're crushed. And so many people I know can resonate with that. And I know that I've resonated with that in the past, as have you, Alice.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Like, as soon as you start talking about how never embracing singledom and like going from relationship to relationship, that's me. Yes. And then this idea that I have to check all the boxes, you know, to feel like I accomplish and, you know, and I am worthy because I went to college, I graduated college, I got engaged, I got married, I have kids, like check, you know, all the boxes. And then forgetting to check in with yourself to see if it's actually working for you, you know, if you're actually getting any fulfillment from it. And not until recently, I gotten into a more of a long distance relationship, and this is like the first time that I've ever been in this such a long term, long distance relationship. So you know, I could say I'm practically single because I just live my life really, you know, and this was a transition for me, going from gosh, one relationship to another. And there's, you know, definitely some codependencies that I had to learn to let go of and to, you know, allow space for myself to grow and allow space for me to get to know myself, you know, outside of a relationship and knowing, you know, what I really like. I never asked myself what I, you know, what I prefer, what I like, because I've been in such a service oriented mode that I just like, what do you want? You know, what is it that I can do for you? And I just never stop and think, maybe I don't really like doing that today.
I hear you. And we have something in common, which is that we both have been married before. And I unexpectedly got into my marriage when so we started dating when we were both 21, got married at 27, and separated at 31, and finalized our divorce at 32. And I spent about 8 months between when my ex-husband left me to when I decided to date again, because it was a really, again, after having been with someone for 10 years, to really check in with myself and be like, I need to be able to approach an experience with a new person from a place of, this is what I won't put up with, this is what I absolutely need from a partner, and then allowing myself to have fun with it rather than pinning the next thing on the next person. So I got to allow myself to view my dating experience in my 30s as, I'm just going to see what happens. And whatever happens is going to help me get closer to the type of person that I actually want to be and the type of person that I absolutely want to be with. And here I am 4 years later with someone that I never imagined being with, because it's better than I ever imagined. And it took so many heartbreaks for me to realize that I didn't have to perform, that I didn't have to be anything other than exactly who I was. And that was the progress that I made through dating. And I'm not saying that right now I'm in the perfect relationship, but if I could have envisioned what a perfect relationship would be, it would be pretty close to what I currently have. And I'm beyond grateful for that.
Yes, I resonate with a lot of things you were saying. My current relationship also feels like that, you know, and it actually took him a while to convince me that I don't have to perform or that I don't have to be anybody but myself, because these inner critics that I have are very strong, you know, and I am so much better now than I used to be in dealing with the critics, but it's been such a transformative relationship, and I really wouldn't trade it for anything else. This deep connection that we have and the amount of growth that we both have gone under, And like you said at the beginning of this topic, when you said like, progress, not perfection. And that's the thing that I think we should keep in mind when you approach a relationship, because at this point in time, that relationship might not appear to be perfect, but that's not really something you want to strive for, because we all change constantly, we grow constantly. And so making sure that we grow together is more important than making that person or making the relationship appear to be perfect or to fit certain expectations, because knowing that you are imperfect and that's okay. We are imperfect always, and that there's beauty in that, and there's room for growth, and and we should be grateful that there are room for us to grow.
You use the word transformational, which I think is so important when it comes to a relationship, is that we are constantly in transition and in transformation. And that's not to say that we're always, and I know I kind of mentioned this maybe 2 episodes ago, like it's not that we're always necessarily working and we're not always striving, but yet we're not remaining stagnant, right? Like we can be in a situation, whether it's a relationship or a job or a living arrangement or whatever it is, where we may feel stagnant, which I think is very different than complacency, which is also very different than striving towards the next thing and losing the present moment. And what helps when we're going through these transformational times is to realize that this is the one time you get to do this in exactly this way, and allowing it to be exactly as it is by relinquishing control is huge. And it's not easy. It's way easier said than done. But once you can kind of view it as something that you have no control over, and yes, you can be making those incremental steps towards that progress that you want, that is more important than like the actual end goal.
Yes, absolutely. I think you are absolutely right. When you get to the end goal, you are going to aim for something else. It's not really, I can't imagine somebody, especially later in life, having more end goals as, just striving to be better and to make the next right decision, and do the next right thing. And I think it's so important to stress that we have to view each other as partners and and teachers. And like, just, in any sort of situation, you can teach each other, even from an incident that they might not react the way you want them to react. They can teach you about what it is that you're not, what the needs are that you're not paying attention to, or you can learn more about yourself through these interactions with the other person. And then realizing your own perceptions or your own flaws in, your perceptions. Yeah, I've learned so much about myself, and I've learned so much about how I approach the world and the faults in my own thinking, my own beliefs, and then starting to challenge those things and, growing from them. And I think that's something that you should put on the top of your list for things you want from a relationship, is just having a partner who could help you learn more about yourself and who could help you grow, and also who would hold space for you no matter what, and just let you be exactly who you are in any given moment, and embrace your progress and your growth and who you were, who you are, who you're going to be, anything at any time.
Yes, I know that when we come to relationships, we often have a preconceived idea of what it's going to look like, whether that's modeled by what we saw as children in our own households, or what we saw on TV, or with friends or older siblings. We get these ideas that love is supposed to look this way. When we enter into relationships with that expectation, without communicating that to someone else, we can be in for a really rude awakening when we realize that our experience is only our experience and that the other person is coming to the table with their own experience. We were talking about sort of checking that box off before of all the different things that you feel like you need to have accomplished. I think recognizing your own attachment style, your own relationship style, and everything else, and being willing to challenge those need to be at the top of the list so that relationships can be a transformational space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And that's been something that we've both been doing, me and my partner been doing constantly. And I'm sort of starting to really enjoy these things that we're learning about each other and about ourselves, even though sometimes in the midst of it, it's very uncomfortable. And embracing that discomfort and not letting it deter you from trying harder and making you feel like, oh, this is not working out because I'm not feeling happy at this very moment. I'm not comfortable in this very moment. You always have to want to question your judgment in certain situations. Sometimes discomfort can be toxic, and sometimes discomfort is actually going to be transformational if you allow yourself to questions, what you believe in, and allow yourself to be transformed by the experience.
There's a quote that I pulled out of a different article that I had put in our notes by Young Pueblo that says, serious transformations begin with two commitments: the courage to try new things and act in new ways, and the honesty needed to no longer hide from or lie to ourselves. And when I think about my marriage and how it ended in a way that I hadn't been expecting, but it allowed for that which I already knew on the inside to come forth and say, wow, there really were a lot of things that weren't working in our relationship because we both were coming to the table with two very different backgrounds and ideas of what a marriage would be. All of those little moments throughout our 10 years together that had been in the back of my mind or sort of resting in my gut were able to come to the surface, and that allowed me to kind of unpack what hadn't worked and what I wouldn't bring into a new relationship. And while it was absolutely terrifying to feel like I was starting back from square one, the time I allowed myself to heal, and I feel like I'm continually healing from that while I'm taking the risks of loving again and putting myself out there again, really has allowed for a huge transformation in my life in so many different ways, not just in, my relationship status. And that has been just liberating.
Yeah. I think there's a really terribly mislabeled conception or preconceived notion about divorces and the endings of relationships because they would tell you you failed it. That's a failed marriage, and that's why you are getting a divorce because you didn't do a good job at it, or for some reason. But there's this book that I read by Glennon Doyle, and she wrote in the book Untamed that that's not how you want to see that. This is a marriage. It's a successful marriage that ended, meaning that you've gotten everything out of it. It ran its course, and now you move on to other, versions of you, a new chapter where you're going to succeed at other things, other relationships.
When I first started dating, I told people I used to be married. I never said the words, I am divorced, because I never liked the stigma that came with that word. And so whenever I phrased it as I used to be married, the other person could fill in the blank. Clearly, I'm not anymore. It just gave more room for me to focus on what was the big part of my life, which was making the decision to commit myself to someone. And it didn't work out. And here I am out here again, trying for another opportunity to be committed to someone, maybe not necessarily in the exact same way, but in a way that leaves behind all of those things that I no longer wanted to carry into this new chapter.
There's part of this that I just recently have made peace with because it was really hard for me to justify leaving. And a lot of times what happens is I would over exaggerate things. Maybe it wasn't that terrible, but I wanted to make sure that I had all the reasons why I left, because I wasn't happy was not enough. You know what I mean? And I have to, especially when you share this kind of information with other people, they would always ask you, oh, what happened? You know? And it's like, how am I supposed to say all the things? You know, it's like, it's not like he cheated. It's not like, you know, it's just not one simple deal breaker thing. It's just a lot of little deal breakers. So I have recently come to just really appreciate what I had and the relationship that we had together, and, you know, and embracing the past and the memories. We're still really good friends, you know. But for a little while there, maybe a year or some, I struggled with it. I told myself, no, it wasn't just because you weren't happy, you know, it was because of all these other reasons. And those reasons were exaggerated, honestly speaking. But I guess it got me through it. And now I have a fresh perspective of what happened. And it's perfectly okay to say, I'm not happy, so I have to leave.
That's exactly what I was going to follow up with, which is that I firmly believe that if you don't feel happy, that in and of itself might not be enough of a reason to someone else, but it's enough of a reason to a person to say, in my day-to-day experience, this is no longer fulfilling. This no longer brings me joy. It might take a while to unpack why, and if you're in a place to work with the person on those things, to do that. But ultimately, that's why someone leaves a job. That's why someone leaves a partnership. There's lots of different reasons why someone is unhappy. And if that's where your gut is like leading you, you have to lean into that. And then once you've identified, okay, this is what I'm feeling, then you get to unpack, where does the root of that come from? And it could be, like you said, stemming from 100, 1,000 different things that have just added up to, this made me unhappy because of all these different little things. And that to me is more than enough of a reason.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna move on from dating and relationships, and I want to get into just life in general, career, and, you know, kind of circling back to your new venture. And I want to share this book that I read called The Lean Startup. And in that book, you know, it has the same sort of message about progress, not perfection. And it's actually very important that you don't strive for perfection. It's called The Lean Startup by Eric Bryce. And it's saying like there are a lot of companies who would just have like a work group when they sit down and they just like iron out all the little details of a product or a service. And they said, okay, now like this would take a months, maybe years even. And then they rolled out the product and it didn't work because they have lost touch with what's real, what's the actual, you know, the market, because they just in their head, they're just assuming these things. They're assuming these things about the market and about their target clients. So the book says that you need to roll the product out and then assess from, you know, your sales, and then adjust the product until it's perfect, until it reaches its max. And I think that's a mentality that I take with me through a lot of things in life, including relationships. You know, like you don't just make up this perfect person in your head and then trying to find somebody to fit that. You know, you find the non-negotiables, and then you start from the non-negotiables to start shaping the rest of it and adjust as you go, because the market also rise and fall and they have different tastes. Just you have to adapt to that, and adaptability is just so important in business.
It is. And I think that when what you were just saying right now about starting up a new venture, and yes, that is the path I'm on. What's really important when we are about to start a new venture is that we can only work from the present moment, and we can only work from those base reasons and motivations and yes, you can have an end goal in mind and a target audience in mind and all of these things. But when it comes down to it, you don't actually know how anything's going to perform until you put it out there. So I like this quote of like, the now is the how. So right in this moment is all I have to work with. And these are my non-negotiables. So when I'm progressing forward, I can think of starting small and having simple nows and then iterating and evolving over time rather than this huge elaborate rollout that's all or nothing. And if I don't get everything I want, then what's the point? And I know that especially with education, there's a pretty finite trajectory for teachers, right? Like you can either be a classroom teacher or an administrator or a college professor, right? And if you don't have a desire to do any one of those three things, then what was the point of your college major, or the fact that you got credentialed or certified, or the fact that you have however many years of experience in a certain job? When you come to a point in your life when you know that what you're currently doing is no longer serving you, but you have an idea of how you want to transform those skills into something that could be servable to other people, that's perfect to work with in the next iteration of this life.
Yeah, absolutely. My journey as a astrologer has been just like that. If you follow me on Instagram at Truth Told Early and you scroll all the way down to my very first post, you can see that I've changed a lot of the things, the way I approach forecasts, the way, how many times I post a day, what kind of content I put out. It's sort of been just me trying out things to see how people respond. And it has been such an interesting learning experience, because I noticed people respond to, if I added more oracle reading, once a day, then I have like, and then looking at the amount of followers I get and then the likes, that's just how I gauge, okay, I think that people like these content and not these other content, because I did try affirmations before. I tried this other check-in and I didn't get as many, responses or interactions. So I think that we should just be perfectly fine stepping out, feeling ready to play around with different ideas and just interact and keep your hand on the pulse of the people that you're serving. Then you would actually know what you can do better.
Definitely. And I know that I can only speak for myself, but I also know in the couple of interactions we've had about our social media, thinking about sort of things looking a certain way in who posts what, and then having in every other thing. And I was very much of the idea like, well, let's not be stuck with this pattern, because if 1 week we're off, is that going to like throw off your entire rhythm or whatever? It's like, no, it actually isn't. It's not a big deal. And I know that with my new business venture, I have gone through a couple of iterations of what I've wanted it to be. And I changed my website in the last 3 weeks. And prior to that, I had gotten some feedback from a couple of friends who have background on whether it was business or marketing, or they have kids, or they're just honest friends who I really valued their feedback. They had only heard one side of my idea. And then when I changed it, I hadn't really updated them. But one of those friends recently shared my website in a group of moms who were looking for, support for their students. And immediately I got a big knot in my stomach because I was like, fuck, it's not ready. It's not perfect. And then I had to just let it go and say, CJ, you already made the website. The website can change. Your offerings can change. A business is constantly evolving. And even though I haven't even gotten my first client yet, because I'm still allowing myself to process ending this different iteration of my career as I'm starting this new one, I just had to talk myself off of the ledge and saying, if this isn't perfect, and if one of these people reaches out to me and it's not what I'm ready to do yet, I can say that, and that's okay. But also, it's never going to reach an audience that might potentially be clients if I don't have wonderful friends in my corner who are willing to share it to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see a lot of the things you're saying, especially with the part about like how do you can't just start making up these things hoping for an audience that could, potentially react or respond to what you have to offer. You have the values working, like you said earlier, working from your values and what you have to offer and the non-negotiables, and then you go from there. And it was kind of like how I started my therapy business, going all on my own. When I first started the business, I had pretty much nothing. It's just my website, my expertise, I went to school for it, and just a contract and just an eagerness to serve, and I started with like making cold calls, and those are hard. So hard, and then I got one contract, two contract, and it started to evolve as I start serving these people. And and then once in a while one of my clients would call and says, hey, do you offer this? Or and I would say, you know what, let me look into that. And then I looked into it, and I start, like, for example, if they ask for a certain kind of form or reports, and I don't have that particular report, I could say, let me see if I can put it together for you. And I put it together, and now it's part of my services. You know what I mean? So like, it's sort of, you just have to eventually take that leap, and just allowing yourself to just put yourself out there and trust that you have all the tools you need, and trust in your ability and trust in your gut, and like giving yourself so much faith.
Trust and faith are two huge words you use there that I think a lot of people don't apply to themselves first, or to the universe, or to our intuition. It's really common to expect someone else to provide us with an answer or a way forward or save us from a situation. And when we put ourselves in a situation where we are going at it on our own and starting from scratch, the only person we have to trust is ourselves. And the only person we can have faith in is ourselves, and in the people that we hope to serve, that we will make those connections. And I really like this idea of, I like the idea of asking yourself the question, I can't be the only one who's interested in this. And once you frame something that really makes you passionate in those terms, you know that when you put it out there and you make those cold calls and you do that research and you eventually thread your way out into communities, you're going to find that one person who's like, holy shit, I didn't know that someone else felt like this. And then you two get to make that connection. So when you embrace the fact that I'm not the only one, you're trusting that you're going to find your people out there.
I agree with you, and it's going to be scary when you put yourself out there, when you make those calls, when you reach out to people, say, hey, I have this idea. When you pitch an investor, it's going to be so scary. But as long as you embrace that idea that you can't be the only one who's passionate about this, you are going to find your people through this.
In thinking about the ideas of transitions and transformation and cycles, I did pull a couple of cards that were so interesting and really spot on. So I went back to using the Jane Austen tarot deck, which is a truth universally acknowledged. And four questions that I sort of had in my mind were, in general, what lessons do we learn from transformation? What are we leaving behind when we transform or transition? What should we embrace in the present? And what can we reap at a later time? In the past, we are leaving behind the Five of Diamonds / the Hierophant, which is the card of tradition. And for me, that is 100% accurate because I have followed the teacher plan of life for 13 years, even though my career has taken its turns in its own way. This card is one that helps to break down the perceived barriers to our growth. And this card actually totally just looks like a mansplanation of the world. And it reminds us that no one else gets to tell us who we are or what we're capable of, that we get to access all of the higher power ourselves with no gatekeepers. In the present moment, we are embracing the Seven of Clubs, which is the card of challenge. These wildflowers are blooming recklessly on this card, just abundantly. And when you think of wildflowers, they have no rules. They just flourish wherever they need to. This is the card of allowing your ideas to freely propagate without reining them in. This is a time to blossom and enjoy creative expansion, because it's better to have 1,000 ideas than to sit there and struggle for the one perfect idea. And what we can reap later is the Jack of Diamonds, which is also the card for the star. And that represents hope for the future. I always think of wishing upon a star and dreaming of all the possibilities without limit. And I think that this card really signifies that a brighter future is on the horizon. Even on those hazy nights or when our path isn't fully visible, we can still dream and be guided.
That was so wonderful. I love how they just lined up so perfectly with leaving behind tradition, embracing challenge, and looking forward to hope and, trusting the process.
And the process is messy. It is not linear. It's going to have its ups and downs and its fits and starts. And when you are in those throes, you just have to breathe through them and realize that you're going to be able to move on to the next step when the time is right for it.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes about growing and progress and reaching for your goals is be stubborn about your goals, but flexible about your methods. And I think that really helped me through a lot of the challenges that I had to face, because it's like, oh my gosh, this is so difficult. I'm meeting so many blockages. Maybe I should just give up. But knowing that there are always ways to think outside the box, and there are always resources that you don't, initially think that you can tap into. Absolutely try something new. Take a step back if you need, and take care of yourself. And then in those moments, you might have a spark of ideas and like other ways you can, sometimes you have to go backwards just a little bit to, to move forward a little more easily. Don't give up on your goals. Hold strongly to those beliefs and those values that you have, because you have something to offer.
I feel like I need to pay you to be my personal motivational speaker, because everything you said was just so perfect. I am grateful for you, and I am grateful for new beginnings and transitions in my life that are always teaching me about myself and what I'm capable of. What are you grateful for, Alice?
I am grateful for you for your guidance earlier. I am grateful for the universe, my journey, the support and the connections that I get to have, and that the fact that I have room for adjustment and growth. I don't have to stay this way forever, and that sounds awesome. I get to decide what my future looks like. I'm also grateful for new beginnings and a new me every single day.
We are new every single day. And speaking of which, we are going to go on a week pause for Celestial Small Talk. So your girl over here is traveling finally back east with her partner to visit family and friends for a week. So Alice and I are going to be taking 1 week hiatus, and we will see you again in 2 weeks for the next episode of Celestial Small Talk.
The weekly astrology forecast for Monday, June 14th through Sunday, June 20th. Monday, June 14th. This will be another uncomfortable and possibly distressing day with a lot of volatility, ego clashes, and obstacles in our path. Knowing this, it will be better to take a step back and observe as much as possible and not get carried away by big emotions and ego stories. Ask ourselves, what is it that this moment is trying to teach us? What are our inner critics trying to get us to do, and how do we overcome them? What do we need to let go of in order to move forward? Toward the end of the night, there might be opportunities to speak with conviction and align logic with emotions. Tuesday, June 15th. Grandiosity might be in the cards early in the morning, but overall, the emotional need to express ourselves will be met with more support and light. Be careful about feeling the need to control others' opinions of you. Remember that only a select few who have earned the right deserve to hear your truth. Later at night, there will thankfully be some grounding energies to allow us to stay mindful of the moment. Wednesday, June 16. This will be a lighter, more vibrant day with extreme attention to details and an insatiable need to get things done. We will also be more innovative and spontaneous, which will possibly allow better problem solving and unexpected cooperation. There might be blockages and power issues in our path here and there, but our lifted spirit and thinking outside the box will help us work through them with minimal issues. Thursday, June 17th. Expect power and control to be misaligned with the collective needs. Communication issues, confusion, and misinformation will also be at odds with our instinctual needs to sort things out and have the necessary details to make informed decisions. However, there will also be opportunities for emotional connections and nurturing interactions, as well as spiritual and intuitive lessons that will eventually change us for the better if we lean in. Friday, June 18th. Our emotional needs for harmony and unity will be lifted by generous gestures, affirmation, and attention. We will be feeling more love, affection, appreciation, and desires. Take this opportunity to more deeply connect with your loved ones, express your adoration toward your partner. If you are single, it is a great day to put yourself out there and enjoy safe company, whether it is romantic in nature. It is also a great day for bigger actions of self-love should you choose to not have company today. Listen to your body and trust your intuition. Saturday, June 19th. This will be a more serious day with the quest for knowledge, exploration, and the pursuits of long-term commitment being at odds with wanting to feel immediate pleasure and comfort. We can expect some resistance, which might result in busy work procrastination instead of actually working towards the important tasks, as we still don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, and it is scary making important decisions underinformed. A balance between dedication toward delayed gratification and taking solid breaks will help. Sunday, June 20th. This will be another volatile, paranoid, and intense day when power and control issues meet egotistical aggression that are at odds with our deep and overflowing feelings, intuition, and our needs for emotional connection and understanding. Remember, sometimes we have to be the one to offer the space for our own healing, comfort, and care. This day will be better spent doing self-care and listening to your body's needs. Tune into your spiritual and creative side. In the next few months, expect abundance and optimism to be more scarce and indirectly flowing. Until July 21st, expect rising in emotions, creativity, intuition, as well as comfort seeking. If you are interested in more daily transit interpretations, guidance on your own astrological chart, or getting advice on relationships based on astrology and more, you can find me on Instagram at Truth Told Early. Thank you for listening.
This week's tangible takeaways. Repeat after me. Progress, not perfection. There is no future perfect time. There is only now. Embrace the present moment by finding the courage to put yourself out there. Be sure to stick to your intuition, stay grounded in reality, work from your non-negotiables, and allow room for growth and adjustments. This is the only way to approach transitions because no one else is coming to do the work for you. We are constantly in a state of transformation, and in each moment, we have the opportunity to decide how we show up, completely independent of our past choices or the stories we tell ourselves. How will you allow yourself to transform today?
Looking up the phases of the moon when you were born can tell you so much about how your instincts and emotional needs align and how to best harness your strengths. Pay attention to the phases of the moon and the signs it is in every day to chart how your body reacts to the different moon phases and signs in order to increase productivity, comfort, and to effectively move through setting intentions, doing the work, checking on progress, celebrating the harvest, recharging, and then repeating.
You can reach us at celestialsmalltalk@gmail.com, on Instagram at Celestial Small Talk, and on YouTube under Celestial Small Talk. Please listen, like, review, share, grow, learn, and love.